What's up, guys? Brady Fugale here, coming at you with a album review for the new Eidola record, Mend, that was released this past Friday, January 17th. Despite this being this band's sixth studio album, and their fifth actually just was released last April, these guys are a new band to me, but immediately with the two singles they released for this album, I was instantly drawn in with their wildly eclectic sound. This band is definitely one of the most difficult bands in terms of categorizing them and giving them clear subgenre labels. To me, the easiest way to do that, though, is to kind of place them in the very broad umbrella that is post-hardcore, which for a good chunk of the songs on this album, I feel like that is pretty fitting, but there's some clear progressive influences like progressive rock, progressive pop. I think either of those labels would be pretty fitting as well. And there was just some clear straight-up pop influence. When you have all of these different influences in your sound, it's always interesting to see how they are going to come together and how they're going to mesh and which songs will kind of have each of those influences kind of more clear than others. So I've been very excited to do this review, and I've taken these last few days to listen to this album over and over, as I always do. And the opinion that I've settled on for this album is that overall, there is a lot to love on here. But for me personally, there is a few tracks that are clear filler on this album, and there's one track that I actually strongly dislike. But starting positive first, the tracks that I enjoyed the most on here are the ones that did have more of that post-hardcore identity to them, had some more gruff vocals, because when you combine those slightly heavier elements with the pop-leaning and proggy elements that this album and these songs have, these songs make for the most dynamic and diverse moments and songs on the record. Immediately, the Faustian Spirit was one of my favorite tracks. It was one of the two singles and was really the song that hooked me on this album. Immediately, you get those jazzy guitar leads in the intro, and then just the song, from there, the song just has non-stop energy the entire time. I love it. You get some scream sections kind of weaving in and out. You also have that screamed bridge section that I thought was great. This song is just such a roller coaster, and that is the true joy of it, and as well as the other songs that I'm going to talk about. Godhead, the final tempo, which follows this song up, is another one that I really enjoy. Just right off the bat, you get probably the heaviest musical section on the record that does very much take from hardcore and post-hardcore in the vocal delivery and the drum. But then just, again, right after that section, you get this kind of jazzy melodic part with those more melodic vocals, which will be a huge compliment of mine later in this review. And then the closing track on here, Revelation, the Infinite Beauty of Oneness, is another highlight for me. Although this one doesn't have as much scream sections, again, it just has so much energy in it with those pounding snare drums that really give this song the energy boost. Despite, like, as far as notes and what's being played on the guitar, this is one of the more melodic cuts on here, but it's one of the most energetic songs as well. And these three tracks to finish the album are three of the best songs on the record. So props to them for this awesome ending sequence. But, I mean, the rest of the album, though, is kind of a mixed bag. Because after the intro track, Brahmin Garden of Eden, which does feel like it's very much building momentum, that transition into Prodigy, which was one of the other singles, kind of leaves a little bit to be desired for me. The transitions between those two songs, how the intro track kind of just builds, and then I just feel like it drops off when Prodigy first hits. Although I like that opening chord progression, it doesn't really have that impact that the intro track was kind of building up to. And another side note on Prodigy here that is another thing that becomes somewhat of a recurring theme throughout many of these songs is that I just feel like the song is too long. It isn't a long song in general by any means, it's just under 4 minutes long, but when you have these ideas that clearly take lots of influence from pop music, I just feel like the song, by the time you get past that guitar solo, just over 2 minutes in, and then those extra vocal melodies added, I just feel like at that point, the song has said all it needs to say. Because I find that when that final chorus hits, I want to skip the song. It doesn't feel necessary. If you stop the song at about 2:15, 2:30, you have an incredibly snappy pop, progressive pop song that I really enjoy. And let's remember, the whole point of pop music is to get stuck in your head and to want to hit the replay button. But after you get past that final chorus, you're kind of burnt out of the song. At least that's what I found personally. And the song would be way more repeatable, in my opinion, if it ended right after those vocal sections, right after the solo. Track 3, Empire of Light, though, is definitely a big step up for me. This song has a lot more energy to it. My favorite part of this song has got to be just over 2 minutes and 30 seconds in, when you get that pretty vicious sounding scream that leads into some double bass drum. The guitars also have this element of funk to them even that plays off of those double bass parts and make it a lot more, I guess, mathy sounding and bring in those prog elements a little bit more. As far as other highlights on the first 2/3 of the records go, Kaleidoscope and Blood in the Water are two more for me. Kaleidoscope is another song that has some great energy to it, especially in those really upbeat drums that also bring more of those techie sensibilities to the forefront. There's the screamed bridge that, to my ears, sees them amplify maybe like an Amity Affliction influence. The chorus, sonically and performance-wise, is one of the most full and rich sounding moments on the album. It just sounds so lively. And Blood in the Water is great too. It has more of those moody, clean guitars that have like a touch of exoticness in them a little bit. The drum grooves that back that part up are also really great as far as they make it a lot more catchy and complement the guitar parts really well. And I especially love, again, the techie sensibilities that the drummer brings to the forefront of this song. There's, again, that real, like, full-sounding scream that leads into this really funky guitar solo. Thought that was great. And the song ends on, again, a scream section. So these dynamics and this roller coaster ride that these songs feel like they're on, for me, is the most enjoyable part of this album. I also have to shout out those, like, 8-bitty techie guitars that flourish in and out of that song Restore Me. And you got, again, that kind of unconventional drum groove that backs those up. Thought that was cool. And the song What It Means to Be Alone has this real methodical pace to it that I found to be really enjoyable, especially once again in the drum. And while these songs weren't highlights for me, I at least could appreciate those specific parts of them. The two main tracks that I found to be pretty significant filler is My Father's House and Pearl in a Dead Sea. Not bad songs by any means, but I just feel like they don't really add much to the album that other songs have already added and done in more interesting ways. They also generally have less dynamics than a lot of the highlights I just talked about. And this album being 13 tracks long, I feel like these two songs could have been cut, and it would have been more of a cohesive and repeatable listen, like I mentioned earlier. Now, one thing that actually kind of really disappointed me on this album was the execution of the ballad. Because I remember when I was listening to this album track by track, I was thinking, with how great the vocals sound and how rich this production is, I feel like a ballad would be killer on this album. So when I first heard the track Renaissance and I got those emotive, more kind of softer, slower, laid-back vocals, which was a fresh idea at the time in this track list, I was like, hell yeah. But unfortunately, they just went for this incredibly sappy and corny love song approach. Which, I mean, a love song isn't really a bad thing. That's not an instant deal breaker for me, and oftentimes I do appreciate the sentiment of it. But with the lyrics and the way they're delivered and just the overall feel of the song, it's just so, it just suffocates you in sappiness. The vocal performance in the verses, especially that first verse, I actually really enjoy. But after that, I really find it difficult to get through this song. If you enjoy this song, more power to you. I personally don't really get it. But I mean, this really is the only like real misstep for me and the only real low point on this album, especially given that the album is 13 tracks long. There isn't really any other songs on here. There aren't really any other songs on here that I find myself not enjoying. This is the only one. So, I mean, that's still pretty much a good thing. As far as other kind of side notes here, I already complimented the production earlier. I love it. It sounds so rich. The clean guitars and the pianos especially sound amazing. Vocalist Andrew Wells absolutely kills it on here. His vocal performance is outstanding. He really does show his vocal versatility in so many amazing ways throughout this album. And drummer Matthew Hansen adds this amazing sense of technicality, like I've already mentioned at multiple times throughout this review. This also adds a lot to the album. The only other things I could maybe think of to add to this review would be, although as much as I do love the vocals on here, I do find that a lot of the cadences and melodies blend together at times, so I do wish there was a little bit more versatility there, just in the cadences and vocal rhythms, not in the actual notes being played, because that front I've already complimented very much, as I should. But I still recommend this album. They just have such an interesting sound. If you're into post-hardcore bands or even maybe some of the lighter side of metalcore and you like more of just the straight-up pop music and at times jazz and funk approach, definitely recommend this album. And I'm going to give it a final score of 21 out of 30. So as always, thank you guys very much for watching. If you have heard this album, definitely comment your thoughts on it below. Remember to hit the subscribe button for more rock and metal related content and album reviews. Until next time, I'll see you guys later. Peace.